Good afternoon, NetSuite users. I'd like to welcome you to Mastering the Inventory Count with Oracle NetSuite, our latest addition to the ongoing Business Solution Partners webinar series. Today, we're diving deep into a critical business function for any company that manufactures, distributes, or retails products, the inventory count. Our resident NetSuite ninja, Antonio Posella, is ready to discuss this important topic. But first, I'd like to provide you with a brief introduction and go over some housekeeping notes. This webinar is brought to you by Business Solution Partners. We're purveyors of cloud-based business and financial management solutions for the modern enterprise. We're a 5-star Oracle NetSuite Solution Partner provider, an Adaptive Insights Gold Partner, a HubSpot Gold Partner, and were recently named AvidXchange's Partner of the Year for 2019. In addition to these accolades, we hold certifications with many other SaaS solutions for finance, sales, operations, marketing, and much more. We represent a wide variety of software and process solutions supported by training to ensure that your company succeeds in the modern business environment. Business Solution Partners is the CFO's trusted resource and a dedicated technology partner for an impressive client list. Over our 30-year history of providing strategic, financial, and operational guidance and technology solutions to a growing customer base, our work has been very wide and varied, and we have the experience with a lot of different companies. In addition to the 2019 awards mentioned on our last slide, we're proud members of the Inc. 5000 for 7 consecutive years and have been named a top 100 value-added reseller by Accounting Today magazine 6 years in a row. We're actively involved in SaaS user groups across the country for NetSuite, HubSpot, and Adaptive Insights. My name is Craig Cook. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Business Solution Partners, and here with my team, Antonio Posella and Michelle Cronley, I'd like to welcome you to our live broadcast. We're about to kick off the educational portion of the webinar, but before we do, I'd like to take an opportunity to go over some housekeeping notes. Our webinar audience is set to listen-only mode, but we'd still love to field your questions. Please take a minute to familiarize yourself with the Zoom webinar interface and the Q&A button. If you have a question about anything in our presentation, please type your queries into the Q&A interface. We may address your questions immediately or hold your inquiries until the scheduled Q&A session at the end of our time. We started off today's webinar with an open poll, and I'd like to thank all of you who have participated. This first poll will close right before our speaker begins his presentation, and we will have an additional poll at the end of our session today to get some feedback from you. All attendees today will receive a follow-up email that includes a recorded copy of our broadcast and a downloadable presentation deck. So we're here today to talk about the inventory count. And to frame the conversation, we asked one of our customers to give us some insights into why this process is so important and the impact that it's had on their business. Vibrant Health has been a trusted name in the nutritional supplement industry for almost 4 decades, and Business Solution Partners has been working closely with the Shelton, Connecticut-based business for many years. We introduced Vibrant Health to the NetSuite platform and continue to support their efforts as they have scaled up from a small company manufacturing one product to take their place as a leader in the industry. When focusing in on the inventory count, the leadership at Vibrant Health had the following to say. Using the NetSuite inventory counts has helped our warehouse tremendously. We no longer need to do frequent physical counts, thereby shutting down our shipping department to conduct traditional inventory. Because inventory counts are scheduled for all of our SKUs, they are counted on a rotating cycle, giving us better control of our assets. By having these counts more frequently, we detect any problems when they're small and make adjustments and corrections. Inventory adjustments are easier and faster using this process, saving downtime in the warehouse and shipping departments. Both finance and the production departments benefit as well by having a more accurate inventory count. Finance can report accurate assets more easily than ever before. I think this is a great summary of why this is an important topic, and I'd like to take a minute to go over our agenda. Before I hand the baton over to Antonio. Today, we're laser focused on the process of counting inventory. We're going to discuss the importance of the inventory count process, why you should use NetSuite's inventory count capabilities, discuss key considerations you should be addressing before the inventory counts function, and check out how NetSuite actually handles this important process, discuss the difference between standard inventory counts and cycle counting, and summarize our discussion before we open the floor to your questions. All right, we're ready to get started. It's my pleasure today to introduce your speaker, Business Solution Partners Senior NetSuite Consultant, Antonio Posella. Antonio is our NetSuite ninja, working on the ground with clients to provide a wide variety of NetSuite administrative and support functions. He received his bachelor's in MIS and master's in technology and operations management from Connecticut State University. You may recognize Antonio as a frequent speaker at NetSuite user group events across the country, where he not only provides in-depth presentations on all things NetSuite, but also mans our Genius Bar, answering any questions the community might have. In addition to his NetSuite chops, Antonio has dedicated a portion of his studies to lean process and is our resident Six Sigma Kaizen ambassador. Antonio, I'm sure by now you're eager to get past the introductions and dive into today's topic, so I'm going to pass the baton over to you.
Thank you, Craig. Welcome everyone to the webinar. Today's going to be pretty straightforward. The agenda today is why should a company use inventory counts? That's basically where the question in the polls came from, and appreciate everyone filling that out. It's the key considerations before using inventory counts. We'll go over quickly, what it looks like in NetSuite to use inventory counts, how to set it up, and some things to think about. And then we'll talk about NetSuite's cycle counting feature, which is an advanced feature. We'll have a quick summary, and then we'll allow you guys to ask some questions. So the start here is what types of companies would use this feature. Basically, any company that has a warehouse, any company that owns their own warehouse and their own product. If you're using a 3PL, your 3PL should be handling this process for you. But basically, anyone who owns their warehouse has inventory items in NetSuite. The value that it provides to inventory in the warehouse here, I'm going to just highlight one or two, is the increased efficiencies within the warehouse. You will notice that when you perform these inventory counts more often, your picking process and your put away process will probably see efficiency increases, mainly because you're not having people walking around looking for product. It's usually in its designated area because you just counted it recently. You might often find product in places that you didn't know it was there, and that happens a lot of times when you count. And if you count once a year or not at all, then you're just never really going to find that in time before it impedes your processes. Another really key value that this provides is discrepancy decrease. So lessons of discrepancies that you'll have with your inventory. So if NetSuite commits and you go to the warehouse and the pickers pick, the committed product should be there because your inventory is more accurate. Also, you get increased buying decisions. The buying decisions are important because when the accuracy is there and you're counting often, people will feel more comfortable relying on the data that NetSuite is showing them when they're creating purchase orders for the company. Additionally, this process and using this feature in NetSuite will provide value for accounting and for financial reporting. It'll give you better tax reporting and more accurate tax values of your inventory. Your inventory valuation will be better, and your accounting team will just have better confidence in the reporting dealing with inventory and value altogether. Now, before you're going to use inventory counts, there are some things to think about. It is a pretty big process. A lot of companies, do this once a year. They do it twice a year. They do it. A lot of companies do it more often. So that's one of the things you're going to talk about and discuss is how often will we be counting. Another thing to talk about is what's the best way to decide this for the company. So you're going to want to get a group of people together, stakeholders, some customer service and sales and warehouse, everyone who would really be dealing with inventory at some point in time, and say, what are our issues, and how often do we feel like we need to count to where we're confident in our numbers. Thirdly is the item grouping. So you're going to decide, basically how you're going to group your items. You may want to count some items more often than others based on velocity or value of the product. So that's really important, again, to bring these stakeholders in, get together, and discuss as a team and decide as a team on, what's best for the company and how are we going to utilize this feature, because it does have some flexibility. Speaking of item grouping, so one of the things that I will point out to you is different ways that you can group your items. The first one is Pareto's Law. When I do this presentation live, I will ask everyone if anyone understands what Pareto's Law is. But in this case, I'll just explain directly what it is. Pareto's Law is a rule or a theory that's pretty much factual at this point, but not quite, is that 80% of your sales comes from about 20% of your SKUs. What this means is these items, these 20% of your items are probably ones that you may want to count more often. But these items may not be high value, but they're high velocity, right? So those are the different ways to sort of think about grouping your items. There are other ways, and you can go ahead and look on Google, or anyone who wants to chime in at the end of the presentation on some other ways that they may group their items currently. That would be awesome. The next set of things to consider is the W's. So, when will we do this? Are we going to do it at night, during the day, or are we going to do it over the weekend? If you only count like once or twice a year, you're going to have to shut down for the day and not fulfill. So there's a lot of things to think about. When is it convenient for each company? Each person in each company may have a different idea, so there's no right or wrong here. Obviously, doing it more often is better, but this is more of like during the days. It's something we do all day, something we do in the morning. Who's going to perform these counts? So you can discuss amongst the stakeholders, who's the best people to perform the counts. I've seen things where it's just the warehouse. I've seen options where companies use warehouse and customer service representatives to go in and count. But one of the best practices to remember is to have more than one person doing a count. And don't have the same person verifying their count. You should have two different people performing a count and a verification. And then also, what will be counted each time? So that leads us back to the item grouping, things like that. So are we going to count all of our items twice a year, all of our items once a year? Are we going to count some items each week, and then another set of items the next week, and then another set of items the week after? It's different for every company what really matters, and what they feel like they need to do to keep their inventory accurate. A company that sells high dollar value items but doesn't sell very many a month may only have to count once a month, and they can count all their items, or even once every 6 months is enough. Again, it's truly just a decision that you guys can make on your own. And if you needed help, ESP could always be here to help you with those decisions, guide you along. The last one is how will we do this? Like, what's our process? It's very important, just as anything else, to design a process as a team, to test it out, and make sure it works for everybody before you just go start and do this. Again, it could be a huge deal, especially if you're doing this once a year or twice a year, where you're shutting down the warehouse, you're going out buying pizza for everyone, and everyone's there all night long counting stuff. The goal is to kind of make that easier, to create a process and document it, have work instructions for everybody, and that way when you finally go to use this feature, it'll be a lot smoother and you won't have issues. Next is a list of, I guess these are things to think about and some best practices, just some things that I've seen along the way using this and heard feedback from clients, and some things that NetSuite offers in their support. So I compiled a little bit of that together. There is some setup involved in this, so you're going to have to set up your items, stick them into a group, decide when the next date is. These things can be done with imports and all this. We'll see this in a little bit. And there's also ongoing maintenance that you have to think about. So whoever creates your items in your system, are they going to be the ones that's assigning this to a group and a next count date, or is it going to be someone in the warehouse that's going to do that? So it all goes back to preparing and really vetting this out before you start it. Also, a lot of times the warehouse has to be shut down. Now, there are ways to work around this, and we'll discuss this in a little time here. But generally, people count like once or twice a year or something like that. It means you have to shut the whole warehouse down. Just know that if you're going to use inventory counts, there is some downtime for some amount of employees. And depending on how you work the inventory counts and how you schedule it, there could just be a smaller amount of downtime or a larger amount, or maybe downtime on just a specific item, things like that. With the mass process can be mass confusion, so make sure you create a process internally, discuss it, and work it out. In NetSuite, when you go to print out your inventory counts sheet on what everybody should print or should be counting, it's not great. It's not, what NetSuite offers isn't great to read. There is another way, and it's sort of a shortcut, and I'll show you guys that in a little bit. When you do get errors with the inventory counts, the error messages are a little bit difficult to understand or figure out in the beginning. As you work through it, there's easier ways to do it. Suite Answers is a big help with this. Trying to figure out what those are. You can't have an open count going across accounting periods. There's actually a second bullet that I'm going to bring up quickly that goes with that. But if this goes back to when are we going to count, right? So if you're going to count at the end of the month, well, if you start counts on the last day of the month and you don't finish, accounting can't close the accounting periods next month. They have to wait for you to finish your previous count before they're able to do that. Additionally, you can't have these items, pending fulfillment, and you don't want to be fulfilling. So you want to just keep that in mind when you're counting items and you're doing a count. And that's what requires us to sort of clear out the transactions and not be transacting on those specific items we're counting. So with those and some things to think about, now we'll talk about what it looks like in NetSuite and how the feature works. So to turn it on, you can go Enable Features, go to Items and Inventory tab, and you can just check the Inventory Counts box. The item setup has three main features, or two main features. It has a grouping and dating section. It has a preferences, and then you have to set up new items as well. When you use inventory counts, there's two main ways to do a count. There's a calculated inventory count and a manual inventory count. The calculated inventory count, what this means is it's going to decide what items you should and should not count on a specific day based on how you set things up. So to do that, you put in a start count to begin the process, you edit the count and you complete it, and then you have someone finally approve or reject the count. All right, in NetSuite, the first thing you're going to want to do after you turn on inventory counts and create your internal processes is you're going to want to, with that item grouping, you're going to decide, right, what group and how often you're going to count your items. If you're a company with many items, you could do this with an import, and down below is what the import, an example of what the import would look like. If you're doing, if you don't have a lot of items, you can do this manually, and I'll show you guys some screenshots in a little bit here to show you what it looks like on the item itself. These are the things that you can import. So you can import the count date, the count interval, which is in days, next count date, and the classification. I'm not showing it here, but you could choose to use classification or choose not to. The classification is the item grouping. So like if you don't group your items into different count dates and you just want to count everything once a year or twice a year, you don't have to use the classification. And you just set a count date in an interval, and NetSuite will use that information. The initial setup can be done with a CSV file. I highly recommend that, especially if you have a large number of items. And see, if you're using classification, that'll be a column E, and it'll just be an A, B, or C. That's all NetSuite has for classification with the standard interval, the standard inventory count. So here you can see this is from the item record, and each of these rows that you see here, this is one item. This is on the item record in edit mode, and you can see each of these rows is a location. So if you have multiple locations, you can set your count date, your count interval, and your classification per location. Now, NetSuite's classification is meant to be used a specific way, but doesn't have to be. It's very flexible, but not more flexible than what you see here. You only get 3 classes. NetSuite classes are generally like this. A items are your high velocity and high value items. C items are your low velocity, your low value items, and B items are everything in between. So generally you would count A items more often, And you would go through counting all your A items more often. You would count your C items less often and your B items somewhere in the middle. This is very flexible. There's a lot of interpretation to be done here, but you don't get more than 3 classifications with this feature. You can set an item to be A classification and have a count interval of 30 days, and meaning you're going to count this item every 30 days. And you can set another item to have an A classification and set that to 60 days, meaning you're going to count every 60 days. Or you can set all your A items to be counted every 60 days. It's really up to what makes more sense for the company and the client that's using this. So on new items, when you're going through and you're going to set up a new item, the things you're going to look for is you're going to want to audit, and you're going to make sure that items that are new are being set up somewhere along the line, whether it's the person creating the item or whether it's somebody else further along within the process. In order to verify and to create a list and somebody to audit this, you could create a saved search. And this is the criteria of the saved search down below. Location, next inventory count date is empty. This is going to do, oops, I forgot, quit. What this is going to do is it's going to let you find all items where you haven't yet set up your inventory count dates. You can have a personal way to organize this, however makes sense for the companies to make sure you're adding these here and updating them as you need. So how does a calculated inventory count in NetSuite look? All right, looks like we have a lot of people. I just got the poll results. Looks like we have a lot of people that do track inventory. So that's awesome. So in NetSuite, on a calculated inventory, you're going to go to create inventory count under inventory, other, and inventory counts. Now, depending on the role you have and the role permissions, you may or may not see it exactly like this. This is from an admin role. So depending on the center you have, your hierarchy to get here may be different, but you can type in create inventory count into your global search, and you will easily find this there. Once you click inventory count, it's going to bring up an inventory count, and it's going to ask you by location. Remember, you can only perform a count by location at a time. You can't just count all your locations at once. You could print out multiple counts per location, or multiple counts at a time, one per location, but you can only start and end one per location at a time. So there's your start date and your end date. You can choose to filter by classification. If you use classification, you can filter by group A items or B items or C items only. And basically what it's saying is your next count date is today. If your next count date is today, then it's going to show up in this list. All right? And then you can count bins and rows with 0 quantity, and there's some other things. And then there's adjustments to be made. You have to choose the adjustment account. You can work with accounting if you don't know what to fill in here, and you guys can figure out what adjustment account to post this to. The whole goal of this create inventory counts is to create an inventory adjustment at the end to make your inventory correct with what NetSuite thinks you have based on what's on hand in reality. So you have to choose an adjustment account. All right. Next is there. So next is when you do the inventory count here. This is what's going to save. Now NetSuite, you can hit start count, and NetSuite can give you a print on a report. But what I do is if you just hover your mouse and you highlight these rows down here and copy and paste all the way down, NetSuite, you can actually paste that into an Excel, and it'll give you a nice Excel document to do your count with instead of using NetSuite's report. Almost every one of my clients that use that functionality rather than using the report. The report isn't good to sort. This way you can sort by item or bin or count quantity. You could sort however you'd like, where in the report it's sorted just by item name, which based on, depending on how your warehouse is set up, that might not be an efficient way to count, by item alphabetical. So copying and pasting these values to an Excel to create your item count to hand out to people to count with is a pretty good way to do it. Once you're done counting, you can edit the count, and you have to enter the numbers. You can enter your quantity count here with what you counted in reality. All right, and then so you enter the count, And then like I said, there isn't a good way to print it. There is a report that you can print the report, but the report doesn't print well. So I showed you guys, a good way to copy and paste it into Excel, so you get the good grid line. You can add grid lines, so it's easy to read. The report also doesn't have grid lines, which is tough to read. You can add grid lines, but it's a setting to reports, and it's still not great. So everything is counted. You pull up that inventory count, and you enter the count, and then the count must be submitted for approval. Once it's submitted, I recommend that the person entering the count is not the person that's also approving it. So what all you're doing here with the approval is you're verifying that the numbers that they put in on the sheet is the same numbers that they put in on the count, like in NetSuite. And so here you can see after an account is approved, if there's a discrepancy, it'll either increase or decrease by a certain amount of whatever item you're counting. Here you can see 2 examples of each, or an example of each. All right. Now, say you are having an issue with an item recently, and you notice that every time NetSuite commits and you go, it's not there, or you just, maybe you have a high value item that you just want to get a solid valuation on, and you're not sure if NetSuite's reporting is right, but it's not scheduled to be counted yet. You can create a manual count. It works the same way as the other inventory count, the calculated one. However, it's not going to suggest what item to count. You're literally just going to tell it. So when you go to inventory other than inventory count, you can see over here in this right section, you're going to put a location and whatever you need to fill out here, the class, and these are filters. And then you're going to put your individual item here. So instead of like getting a list of items to go count, you're going to tell the system, I want to count this item and that item. Well, you have to manually add these. So it's not very efficient if you're going to count more than like a handful of items to go and create them here. And this has to be created by hand. You can't import this to create one. So yeah, it's really good to start one, to create one. If you're going to do a count on a couple items here or there, like ad hoc counting. All right, it works the same way. It's going to create an adjustment at the end. Once you save this, you're going to copy and paste your items to a spreadsheet in Excel, count it, edit this, put in your new count, and then go ahead and finish it, and it'll make the adjustment for you. So that ends the the review on inventory counts. So there is an idea called cycle counting. You can make the inventory counts sort of cycle counts if you set up your grouping and your next count dates correctly. The idea of cycle counting is that you're going to count your items more often and more frequently to get through them at like a more appropriate time. So that way maybe you don't have to shut your warehouse down, right? So NetSuite does offer this feature, but it's not offered until you have the advanced WMS feature. If you have that, then you do have cycle counts available to you. And if you're interested in advanced WMS or more, getting some more information about it, you can use Suite Answers or email BSP. We can help you learn more about that. The main types of cycle counts that are out there is seasonally and periodically, which means you're counting like per season or every once in a while. There's annually, and those first two are sort of what we've been discussing, and that's what inventory counts get you to. And then there's perpetually. So perpetually, the idea behind that is you're going to figure out, I have 365 items, and I want to have all my items counted fully every quarter. So you're gonna have to like divide your number of items by 120 days, and you're gonna have to count 4 items a day, right? In order to count all your items by the end of the quarter, right? Something like that. And that way you're, as part of your business process, closing up shop at the end of the day or in the beginning of the day, whatever, you're going to count those 4 items or those 5 items or just a few items each day. And that way every quarter you've gone through all your items. That works for many people, and it's very good. Unfortunately, with the inventory counts, you can't fully perform that, but you can get pretty close if you get clever with the way you do your dates and your grouping. So why would you use it? Like I said, the best thing is you don't have to shut down. Another really important value from it is Your inventory value and your counts on your items are done more frequently, which means they're more accurate more often, right? So yeah, it's pretty good to look into. You guys can do some information. There's a lot of information on Google between, for cycle counts as well. Sweet Answers also has a lot of information on their inventory counts and cycle counts, and you're always welcome to reach out to business solution partners. So in summary, the inventory counts help keep inventory quantity and value accurate for warehouse and accounting. Some things to think about before you work on NetSuite or work on inventory counts and some setup is how often are you going to count? How are we going to group our items? And let's design a process before we do it, document it, and test it out. Next, we went over performing inventory counts. We talked about using calculated cycle count or calculated inventory counts versus manual. And we talked about the workaround with copying and pasting to Excel to get a nice inventory count sheet to work from. Then we quickly reviewed, the idea of cycle counting, where NetSuite has it available and how it could work for you if you're interested. All right, so that's the end of my presentation there. I'd hand it over to Craig if you'd like to take over and bring us home.
Great. Thanks, Antonio. That was a great presentation. I just want to tell all of our attendees that we have now opened up the floor to questions. Please find the Q&A interface in the Zoom webinar, and you can type your questions in and we'll address them. So Tony, we asked our attendees in the opening poll whether they use a third-party logistics company to fulfill their items or they own their own warehouse and do it internally. But I've certainly come across clients in my experience that can have a blend of both solutions, fulfilling certain items internally and others through a third party. Does the NetSuite inventory function support this?
So you can do cycle counts for locations that are not your own. However, there's multiple ways to do it. So generally the 3PLs are outsourced, if you use Fulfilled by Amazon or a third party warehouse company, you can ask them to do the counts for you. Some companies will let you come in and do it for you or do it with you, or you're allowed to do it yourself. You can enter this information into NetSuite as a cycle count, although you're not getting as much value because you're not really doing the counts yourself. It's probably just as easy to import an inventory adjustment at that point based on the information they provide you, but you surely could do it if that's how you wanted to just do it all one way and track it one way.
Excellent. So Mona asks us, is there a way to add a manufacturer and an MPN to the enter inventory screen?
So you mean I'm supposing you mean for a filter, Mona? So you could filter out based on, to count by manufacturer, to count by a part number or something, or to display them on the screen. Is that so they could be on the printout? Yes. Okay. So I'm actually going to go back to make sure I understand what slide I think you're talking about. So I think you're talking about like in this area, can we add the MPN and stuff to here? You actually, unfortunately, cannot modify this page. You see there's no customized view or anything like that. So what you see here is really what you get, which is one of the limitations. And that's why, there's a report you can run, an inventory count report we can run, which you could probably add that information to, but not to this page itself.
Excellent. So Frank has a question about like barcode scanning. Can the accounts be assisted by utilizing scanners in the process?
I mean, so usually scanners working directly with NetSuite, all you can do is scan a value into a box that holds text, right? So, usually it takes some third-party service. There's several out there. You got PageJet, RFSmart, Oslink / Descartes. There's several others, eMobility. Usually you need a third-party company to help you utilize that, and they usually have features to help you do this. And it will use this NetSuite inventory count, but it'll allow you to use the scan gun. I see the next question here.
Yeah, so Maria asks, are you able to do an inventory count by serial and or lot number?
Absolutely, yes. If you have serial numbers on, I just didn't have them on in this account. It will do it by lot number, and you notice it has rate here and stuff, so it's going to make you count by lot number.
Great.
Great
So the
question, everyone. Thank
questions
you.
are slowing down in the Q&A panel. I'm just going to give everybody another opportunity to ask any more questions that you may have. I'm also going to launch our feedback poll. So I'm launching that poll now. Please feel free to give us some feedback as to whether or not you found value in today's webinar. And Antonio, if you would just kind of skip forward in the slides, we're going to give a little shout out. So we want to thank you for joining our webinar today. That about wraps it up. We're going to hang out, and if you have any more questions, we'll try to answer them. But Tony, if you go back one more slide, we want to tell everybody about a fantastic topic we have lined up for our next webinar in just over 2 weeks. Please join us for mastering budgeting and forecasting with Oracle, NetSuite, and beyond on August 15th at 2 p.m. Eastern. In this webinar, we're going to examine budgeting and forecasting functionality of NetSuite, provide you with some best practices and tips for success, and go beyond NetSuite with a dive into the corporate performance management platform, Adaptive Insights, where you can take your budgeting and forecasting to the next level. So we had a great attendance today. We have some really good registration for this upcoming webinar, and we encourage you to attend as well. All right. On behalf of myself, Antonio, Michelle, and the entire team here at Business Solution Partners, I'd like to extend my thank you for your participation today. And just a reminder, we're going to be delivering a recording of this webinar as well as a downloadable version of the presentation deck in our follow-up email. We have some editing to do, and there's a little bit of administrative work, so you can expect to receive that email in just a couple of days.
We do have another question, Craig, if you'd like to.
Oh, great. Yuko asks, is this feature useful, this inventory counting feature useful for advanced manufacturing?
So the answer to that is, I believe advanced manufacturing and inventory counts would not really have much value towards each other. The only thing you'll get from the inventory counts is like if you're building assemblies, you can count your components and things like that, and your finished goods. So it'll work work alongside it. However, I don't think whether you have advanced manufacturing or you don't, I don't think that really matters. It's just, do you hold inventory, and do you have control over it? Can you go count it? That's really what it's for. If you use advanced manufacturing, doesn't really matter. It'll still work. I just don't think you get any additional usage. Advanced manufacturing may have its own thing too, which I may not be aware of for that. So you can look into that as well.
Great. So Tony, our poll's been up for a while now, and 100% of our attendees who answered the poll found value in today's webinar. So I think that's awesome. Really awesome. So thank you everyone for your feedback, and thank you, Tony, for your excellent presentation. And we also got 100% of respondents saying that they're planning on implementing some of these recommendations and best practices. So I think that's a phenomenal result, right?
Thank you, everyone.
All right, Tony, let's go up to that last slide. We're going to put our contact information up. And should you or anyone at your company need assistance with the inventory count process, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to engage with you and help you transform these outdated manual processes into a streamlined and automated flow. We're going to leave this webinar live for just a few more minutes so that you can have a chance to answer our feedback poll questions and maybe ask one or two more questions in the Q&A panel. And I just want to say thank you to all of our attendees, and we look forward to seeing you next time, hopefully on Thursday, August 15th at 2 p.m. for our Mastering Budgeting and Forecasting with NetSuite. Thanks so much for all of your support and time today, and we look forward to seeing you next time.